You're great at enduring, Sam. So don't act surprised no one wanted you there. Disappearing is what you do best, and this time we just helped you do it a little earlier. That's what my sister said to me. Right there in the backyard, while everyone else was raising glasses for a wedding I wasn't invited to. And if you've ever been written out of your own story, not because you were weak, but because you were too strong to be needed, then stay. Because this story is yours. It's about reclaiming space, not with noise, but with a silence they can't ignore. Aunt Ava was wearing flip-flops with rhinestones and a shirt that read, "Blessed and BBQ'd." She had one hand curled around a plastic cup of sangria and the other adjusting a floppy straw hat. She sauntered toward me with that same backyard ease she brought to every family function. A woman born to hold court next to a folding table. "So," she said, grinning wide, "are you flying in or driving up for the big day?" I blinked. She waited. "The wedding," she added, eyes lighting up like I'd just asked her to spill a juicy secret. "Olivia's finally tying the knot with that guy. What's his name? The one with the hair gel and the teeth. James? No, Ethan." "Oh," I said, adjusting the sweating plate in my hands, watching a stray noodle slide dangerously close to the edge. "Right, that wedding." She chuckled, satisfied, then wandered off to the grill, already calling out for someone to flip the burgers. I stood there, sun pressing down like shame on my bare shoulders, caught between a cooler full of beer and a lemonade dispenser that was running low. The macaroni salad jiggled. Someone's toddler screamed from the bounce house. And just like that, I learned my baby sister was getting married. I walked into the house and found an excuse. Something about checking on the deviled eggs. I walked straight through the kitchen, past the tinfoil-covered trays and my mother's humming voice, and out the side door. My car was parked just far enough down the driveway to be out of earshot, but close enough to still hear the laughter echoing from the lawn. I slid into the driver's seat, turned the AC to max, and leaned back until the vents blasted the sweat off my collarbone. For a moment, I couldn't tell if the shaking in my chest was from the cold air or the absence it carved out inside me. They planned a wedding. She planned a wedding. And I was the last to know. No, not the last. The only one who didn't know. I had been there through every scraped knee crisis, every late-night sobbing phone call. I was the one who drove to her dorm at 2 a.m. when she thought Ethan had kissed someone else. I was the one who mailed her tampons and lavender oil when she got stuck at her internship in D.C. The one who Venmo'd her rent more than once with a heart emoji and no questions asked. I was the scaffolding behind every facade Olivia ever built. But when the real event came, the one with cake and vows and flower arrangements, I didn't even merit a text, not even a lie. I stayed in the car for a while, breathing in bursts. My hands trembled over the wheel. I wasn't angry yet. Not really. Anger would have given me something to do. I was just airless. Like someone had opened a door in my chest and let the weather pour in. When I finally picked up my phone, the screen was slippery from my palms. I pulled up Mom's contact and hit call. She answered on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart," she chirped, voice so bright I flinched. I imagined her at the kitchen counter with a dish towel in one hand and the cordless phone tucked under her chin. Always doing something, always somewhere else. "Hey, quick question," I said, trying not to crack. "Is Olivia getting married?" There was a pause, a beat too long. The hum of the refrigerator and the distant clatter of cutlery filled the gap. "Well," she said finally. "Yes, next month, actually. We didn't know if you'd be free." "I didn't know it was happening." She chuckled. "Oh, Sam, don't be dramatic." That word again. That old ghost. The same one she used when I cried at Dad's funeral and she told me to keep it together. The one she deployed when I lost my job and needed someone to say it wasn't my fault. Dramatic. The family synonym for inconvenient. "Maddie really wanted something small," she added. "Just family." "I am family," I said, quieter than I meant to. "Yes, of course," she said quickly. "But you're always busy and James's parents had a lot of input. It just got complicated, complicated, easier. That's what she always said about the things she didn't want to do. I let the silence stretch long enough that she had to reach for it. You're not mad, are you? I don't know what I am. Another pause. Another breath she didn't know how to fill. We just thought it would be easier this way, she said. Less pressure. For everyone. That's when I knew. It wasn't that they forgot. It wasn't even that they lied. It was that they had looked at the list, at the seats, at the head count, and made the conscious, strategic decision to exclude me. Because I wouldn't raise a fuss. Because I'd been trained to be the strong one. Because I was easy to erase. I told her I had to get back to work. I wasn't working. She said, "All right, sweetheart," and hung up without waiting for a goodbye. The AC continued to blast in my ears. I didn't move for a full minute. I looked at the macaroni salad still sweating in the passenger seat. The plate had bent slightly from the heat. I opened my travel app and searched. Reykjavik, one way. The screen glowed cool blue against the warm red of my rage. Sam opens a travel app. One-way tickets. Reykjavik. Confirm. They didn't forget me. They planned without me. That's worse. The cabin was smaller than I expected. Tucked into a hillside veined with moss and ash, it felt like something that had always existed. A secret the land had grown around. The kind of place that didn't ask for explanations. Just breath and time. I arrived just before sunset. The sky was the color of steel, and the lake below looked frozen, though it wasn't. Mist hovered over the surface like it had nowhere better to go. The windows were fogged from the inside. The water in the shower smelled faintly of sulfur, and when I turned the tap, it coughed before it flowed. There were no welcome notes, no itinerary, no wedding playlist humming from another room. I boiled water and poured it into a thick ceramic mug. The first sip burned the back of my throat, and for the first time in days, I felt present inside my body. Still trembling, but present. The cabin had no television. I turned my phone over 3 times before I remembered it was mine to ignore. On the 4th turn, I opened the camera, framed the cup in my hand. The lake behind it, fog curling up like ghost smoke. I posted the image to my story. No caption. Then I waited. It didn't take long. Mom viewed it first. Then Olivia. Then Avenue. Even my aunt, the one who told me once that silence was how strong women spoke. They all saw it. But no one said a word. Not a question. Not a heart emoji. Not a comment about the view. It was exactly what I expected. And it still hit like a bruise I thought had healed. Later, I pulled out my journal. Not for poetry. Just for lists. Things I didn't have to do here. RSVP, make small talk, pretend I wasn't hurt, smile for a camera that never pointed at me. I scribbled until the lines bled through the paper. That night, I slept with the window cracked open. The cold didn't bother me. The silence did. Not because it was empty, but because it made everything else feel fake. In the morning, I made coffee. Strong, bitter, dark enough to hold grief without breaking. I walked to the edge of the lake with a blanket draped over my shoulders and my boots crunching on frostbitten moss. There was a wooden chair, half buried in the mist. No one had placed it there for comfort. It simply existed, like the truth, unapologetic, unmoved. I sat for a while. The kind of while you can't measure in minutes. The kind that passes through you like wind through pine. I thought of the weddings I had attended. Ours always had a chair, an extra one. For those who couldn't make it, a tribute to the gone. Now I wondered, would there be one for me? Would they leave it empty? Or would they fill it just like they filled my absence, with polite lies and matching pastels? I stood, lifted my phone, and took another photo. The chair, the lake, the mist, no filters, no tags, just the truth in frame. I posted it to my story. Then I went inside and brewed another cup of coffee. The steam curled the same way the mist did. Slow, deliberate. By the time I checked my phone again, the scene list had shifted. Mom had viewed the photo, twice. Olivia had screenshotted it. Still, no messages followed. I didn't break her wedding. I just wasn't there to hold it up anymore. The sky over the lake was the soft silver of pre-dawn, and the steam from my mug blurred the window in slow waves. I hadn't opened the curtains fully, just enough to watch the light crawl across the frozen earth. The cabin was still, the kind of quiet that presses on your skin like snowfall. No phones ringing, no last-minute seating charts. Just a kettle clicking on the stove and the hush of breath against ceramic. I hadn't spoken to anyone in days. Not really. Tessa had messaged once, 2 days ago. Jenna's not doing great. Looks like she's barely holding it together. I saw the message. Didn't answer. Just stared at it until the screen dimmed and disappeared into reflection. Today was June 22nd, Olivia's wedding day. I knew the time, not because anyone had told me, but because I could feel the world holding its breath. Something about the stillness felt too staged, like the air itself was trying not to disturb the performance. I was pouring oats into a pot when my phone buzzed. One short vibration, then another, then a third. Longer, like a warning. Tessa. You need to see this. A link. No preamble, no explanation, just a TikTok thumbnail of blurred movement, a flicker of chiffon, a face caught mid-yell. I clicked. The video opened into chaos. A scream ripped through the speakers, not of joy, but of fury. Jenna stood at the center of a white-draped reception hall, her hair undone, mascara streaked down one cheek. She was holding a bouquet, but not like a gift, like a weapon. Guests gasped. A centerpiece fell. Glass shattered off-screen. "You were my best friend, Liv," Jenna sobbed, her voice cracking into something sharp. "And you slept with him knowing that." People froze. Some tried to pretend it wasn't happening. Others didn't move at all. Like if they stayed perfectly still, the explosion might pass over them. The camera jolted, then caught Olivia. Still in her gown. Still in denial. But her face told the truth before her mouth ever could. She didn't deny it, didn't plead, didn't move. Her hands trembled at her sides like they wanted to disappear. Behind her, Ethan stood frozen. His tuxedo looked too clean, like he hadn't yet earned the mess. He raised a hand, said something inaudible over the noise, but no one cared. He wasn't the center of this story anymore. The guests began to shift. A woman gathered her purse. Someone else whispered, loud enough to be heard. One of the cousins, Trish maybe, turned to leave, napkin still in hand. A man laughed nervously in the background. Then Olivia collapsed. Not fainting, not delicate. Just folded. Like all the weight of the lie had finally landed. The video ended there. No outro. No credits. Just a lingering sense that something irreversible had happened. My phone buzzed again. And again. And again. I didn't look right away. Instead, I made oatmeal. Stirred slowly. Sat down at the table with my journal and wrote in sharp, even letters. They missed the scaffolding, not the structure. Because that's what I'd been. A framework. Invisible but necessary. Now that I wasn't holding them up, they were collapsing under the weight of themselves. More messages came in. First Diane, a full paragraph I didn't read. Then Aunt Ava. "Sam, are you watching this?" Then Olivia's college roommate. "Please tell me you're okay." Then Mom. "Come home. We need you." Each one more frantic than the last. As if my silence was the real scandal. As if I had caused the earthquake just by stepping away from the fault line. I ignored them all. Finished my oatmeal, washed the dish, wiped down the counter. The phone buzzed once more. A text. "Olivia. Please, I didn't think you'd care this much. I didn't think it'd matter. I was never the daughter they loved, just the one who never needed saving. The sky had stopped pretending to be blue. It settled into a permanent shade of pewter, as if even the weather had run out of grace. The cabin's walls creaked softly in the wind, like bones adjusting in their sockets. I hadn't opened the door in 2 days. The silence outside felt more honest than anything waiting beyond the Atlantic. My phone was doing what it always did when they remembered I existed. Buzzing, blinking, needing. 3 voicemails in an hour. 5 more after lunch. The last one came just before dusk. I let them pile on the screen like snow I refused to shovel. I didn't play any of them at first. Instead, I boiled water, wrote in my journal. They don't miss me. They miss what I held up. They miss the late-night rides to pick up a sobbing Olivia, the silent gift cards slipped into drawers, the way I always said, "It's fine," even when it wasn't. They miss the convenient daughter, the quiet fixer, the one who didn't have a meltdown at family gatherings or cry in public or ask for more space in the photo. They miss the utility of me, not the reality of me. The phone buzzed again. Another voicemail, this time from Aunt Carol. Voice shaking like she was carrying grief for the first time. "Your mother's not well, Sam. She's unraveling. Olivia won't come downstairs. People are talking. They think something's wrong with the family. Please just talk to her. Talk to someone." As if my voice still had weight in a house where it had been consistently dismissed. As if my presence could patch the cracks they insisted weren't there. I closed the app and stared out the window. The lake was glass again. Still. Unmoved. Just like me. A few minutes later, a message appeared. 1 line. From Olivia. I was wrong. No defense, no bargaining, no begging. I read it twice. Not because I needed to believe it, but because it was the first sentence from her in years that didn't contain a request. Tessa checked in around midnight. "You okay?" "You don't owe them anything." I smiled. Small, tired. The kind of smile that doesn't reach your face but shows up anyway, out of habit or hope. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed and opened an old photo album I hadn't touched since college. A curl of dust rose as I flipped the pages. There it was. A photo from the year Dad died. Me, 16. Olivia, 12. She was wrapped in my arms, crying into my shoulder. My face was steady, eyes dry. Like I'd understood even then that tears weren't mine to show. There was no caption. But if there had been, it would have said, "The scaffolding no one thanked." I stared at that image for a long time. Then I picked up my phone, opened voicemail, and deleted every single one of them. Mom's brittle voice, Aunt Carol's soft guilt, Diane's apologetic chaos. All of it. Gone. All except one. Tessa's. The only one who asked how I was. I opened a new message. Typed slowly, deliberately. "I'm not coming back. Not this time." The send button blinked blue. I tapped it without hesitation. Then I stood, walked to the small desk in the corner of the cabin, and opened the drawer. Inside was a stack of thick, cream-colored stationery I'd brought with me but never used. I pulled out one sheet, uncapped the pen, wrote the first line. I hope next time the invitation comes before the apology. When she finally called, my mother's voice cracked in places I never thought she could break. It was just past midnight, and the wind outside the cabin tapped at the windows like it was asking permission to come in. I sat curled in the armchair with a wool blanket over my knees and a chipped mug of chamomile cradled in both hands. The kind of tea she used to make when I had stomach aches. Or when she wanted to soften something she didn't really want to say. Steam curled upward, catching in the low light. I didn't flinch when the phone buzzed. Didn't reach for it right away. It was her. Mom. I let it ring once. Twice. Then answered. "Hi, honey," she said, too quickly. The way people say, "How are you?" when they don't actually want to know. The silence between us wasn't heavy yet. It was thin, like the space before a string snaps. "I wasn't sure you'd pick up," she added. I didn't respond. She filled the space, like always. Olivia won't speak to anyone, not even her father. She won't eat. She keeps asking if you've responded. If you're coming home. Home. That word used to mean something. It used to mean lasagna in the oven, the smell of lemon cleaner, the creak in the fourth step of the staircase. Now it meant expectation wrapped in guilt. I told her you needed time, Mom continued, but she's just lost. Still, I said nothing. I know this isn't easy, she offered, her voice wobbling in a way that sounded practiced, like she'd been rehearsing vulnerability in front of a mirror. You've always been the strong one, Samantha. I let the words hang there, then swallowed. And you made sure I paid for it. The line went still. No static, no breathing. Just the kind of silence that echoes even in your chest. I didn't mean, she began. I cut in gently. You didn't have to. I got the message. She paused, then barely above a whisper. I wish you were here. I turned my head slightly, looked out the window. The moonlight scraped across the lake like silver on glass. Everything looked still. Clean, unclaimed. I said. For years, you just never looked. Another pause. This one longer. Thicker. She drew in a breath to speak again, the kind that normally comes with justification or revision, the need to explain away history as a misunderstanding. But no words came out. And for once, she didn't try to fill the silence with anything. No excuses. No rewrites. No soft lies dressed as sentiment. Just air and time. The call didn't end so much as fade. The line stayed open long enough for her to know I hadn't hung up, and long enough for me to know she finally couldn't hide behind the signal. I lowered the phone to the table, picked up the tea again. It was still warm, and the cup didn't tremble. They sent flowers. They sent a framed photo. They still didn't send the words that mattered. The delivery had come just before dawn, a box leaning against the cabin door, the cardboard slightly damp from morning frost. Inside, nestled between crumpled tissue paper and someone else's idea of forgiveness, was a bouquet of pale lilies in a silver frame. The photo was cropped tightly. Olivia and Ethan, though he stood awkwardly at the edge. A few smiling faces blurred in the background. It took me a minute to realize where I was supposed to be. There was a gap in the front row, filled with light and a sliver of empty floor. The kind of absence that couldn't be edited out, only disguised. No note, no return address. Just evidence that they were thinking of me. Too late, too quietly. I left the box by the fireplace and dressed slowly, pulled on the thickest sweater I owned and the boots that still smelled faintly of airport floors. The snow had started falling again, thin flakes spiraling like ash. Outside, the world was breathless. I walked to town the long way, past the ridge where the rocks jutted out like ribs, through the grove of trees that clicked and whispered as I passed. The air stung my cheeks, but it felt clean, uncomplicated. There was a red mailbox near the bakery, a squat thing with rust creeping along the edges, like it had been forgotten too many winters in a row. I slipped the envelope into the slot. It was heavy in my hands, but weightless as it slid inside. I hope you find peace. I hope you tell the truth. I hope next time the invitation comes before the apology. I didn't wait for the door to click shut, just turned and walked away. The mailman passed me on the path back. He nodded once, recognition without intrusion, and kept going. By the time I returned to the cabin, the light had shifted. Everything outside was gilded in gold. The snow looked like it had been dusted by something celestial, and the lake had stilled into glass. Not frozen, just too quiet to ripple. I made tea, let it steep longer than usual, carried the mug to the edge of the lake and placed it on the armrest of the wooden chair. The same chair I had photographed days earlier, back when it was just a symbol of what they wouldn't say. Now, steam curled from the mug. Slow. Deliberate. I stepped back, framed the shot, and took it. No filters, no edits. The chair, the snow, the tea. I posted the photo to my story. No caption. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. Just an image. A different photo from the wedding, cropped tighter this time. My place still missing, but this time not disguised. The space was raw. Obvious. The edge of someone's shoe. A slant of light across a white folding chair. Her caption read, "You should have been there. And you should have been seen." I looked at it for a long time. The screen dimmed, then brightened again as I lifted the phone. I closed the message. No reply. No rage. No need. Back inside, I pulled the blanket over my lap and opened the book I'd started 3 days ago. Found the same paragraph I'd read twice already and began again. Not because I was distracted, but because I was finally unhurried. She never stormed in, never demanded an apology, never made a scene. And still, her absence echoed louder than their ceremony ever could. While the flowers wilted and the apologies stumbled through phone lines, she was thousands of miles away, wrapped in silence and steam, offering nothing but a photo of an empty chair. Not as a threat, not as revenge, but as a mirror, one they all had to look into, whether they wanted to or not. Because sometimes the greatest reckoning comes not from confrontation, but from refusal. A refusal to be erased. A refusal to keep showing up for people who only call your name when they need scaffolding. She was never invited to the celebration, but somehow she became the most unforgettable part of it. And when the chaos settled, when the cake had spoiled, when the framed photos started to collect dust, they all remembered what had been missing. Not her voice, not her blessing, her presence. They missed the calm she brought, the emotional architecture she held in place. But what they mourned most wasn't what she did. It was how easily their world unraveled without the person they'd once decided didn't matter. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. A long overdue recognition that absence is also an answer, and sometimes the most powerful kind. Because justice doesn't always wear armor or shout from podiums. Sometimes it's a single step away from the table that never made space for you. A handwritten letter that doesn't beg or accuse, just hopes. She gave them no spectacle, only consequence. And in that space where noise once ruled, in the aching hush left behind, the truth bloomed. Uninvited, unrelenting, undeniable. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates forever once it's heard. There's a lesson buried in her silence, one that lingers longer than any toast or song. Do not mistake quiet for consent. Do not mistake the strong one for someone who will carry your cowardice forever. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not in anger, but in certainty. Because dignity doesn't beg to belong. It simply leaves and takes the light with it. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. And when that truth arrives, it doesn't knock. It lets itself in, quietly, like snow, and changes everything. If you saw yourself in the quiet spaces of this story, in the words left unsaid, in the parties you weren't invited to, in the times you had to walk away just to protect your dignity, don't leave. The stories to come won't speak for you, but they'll reach the parts of you that have stayed silent for too long. Follow this channel, because the truth doesn't always knock. Sometimes it enters like snow and leaves everything changed. You were the one mistake this family didn't manage to erase, Brooke. We kept you around for appearances, not out of love. Don't kid yourself. You were never wanted, only tolerated. These were the words my own mother said. No anger, no hesitation. Just the cold certainty of someone who had erased me long before I realized I was gone. If you've ever stood in the middle of a family gathering and felt like a stranger, if you've been cut from the photos, the memories, the acknowledgements, then stay. Because this story isn't just about being cast aside. It's about rising and reclaiming the place you never should have had to fight for. The valet smiled as he handed me the stub. his eyes sweeping over the sedan I'd scrubbed for an hour that morning. It gleamed under the soft twilight, but no amount of polish could disguise its modesty next to the forest of luxury vehicles